It's April 1st, and let's talk about what the writing goals are for the next 3 months. Welcome or welcome back. My name is CF Claire, and I'm on a journey to become a self-published, Kindle Unlimited romance author. And I just finished writing the first draft of my first book in the series I'd like to publish, which is a rom-com romantasy, or I don't know. Regardless, I finished that first draft about 3 weeks ago, and now we need to figure out how to move forward. So let's do a little bit of a recap of how Q1 went from the writing perspective. I'll link below some of the other writing goals planning videos that I've done where I talk more about the planning method I use. I'd rather not get into that too much here. I use HB90 method that Sara Cannon developed, and I'll link her down below as well. Essentially, I use quarterly planning though, with very broken down goals so that I can track progress. And I like to use Kanban board as well. I find that very motivating. So I'm going to put on the screen what my 3 goals were for Q1. And I managed to achieve all of them, which is fantastic. I feel great about that, especially considering how many snow days and how many sick days we had, and just general, the world is on fire, and that affected me very badly. So we're not going to dwell on that, but I'm very pleased as far as the writing goes. I'm lucky enough to be able to sort of approach writing full time, so to speak, in that my husband is the breadwinner of the family. I had been a stay-at-home mom. I guess technically still am. My kids, since fall 2025, both of them were of age to go to school, and they've been really enjoying it. And so that's kind of where we're at. Side tangent, I will link it below, but I really appreciated Madeline James in one of her recent videos talking about how one of the reasons that she switched over to being like self-published and to being a full-time writer was because of how often her kids would get sick and how they just like couldn't handle the PTO situation, like they needed someone to be home. It is so real. That is exactly the main reason why I also stay home even though my kids are in school. Like, you would not believe how often my kids need to be picked up from school, or anyways. So suffice to say, about 4 weeks out of Q1, one or both of my kids either needed to be picked up from school or could not go to school. So I am a full-time writer. I'm very grateful for it. I don't know how we would do anything else, but I am very grateful for it. And with that being said, that leads to the amount of time that I technically have to spend on writing. So one of the things that really got proved to me during Q1 was that if I keep up with the commitment to myself to spend 6 time blocks, 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, so 30 time blocks total a week, I can get a lot done. I can get a lot done. And that amount feels very approachable daily. That works out very well as a baseline to sort of judge how much time I really have to work on projects. Q1 was also the first quarter where I consciously planned in, I am specifically not writing for these amount of days. In the past, I have come from a mentality of like, how much can I do? There is no end point that's like good enough. It's just how much more. And if I do that, then how much more after that, which is obviously not a good mentality. It was founded on, I'm not going to write it off. There was a reason that I came from that mentality. Out of the 330 time blocks that I anticipated I would be able to work during Q1, I actually ended up working 416, essentially, which was very nice. That a lot of that came from working on the weekends when I was not scheduled, when I don't expect myself to work, just a little bit here and there to stay in the flow of drafting the first draft of Project Goblin. And I actually found that fun and motivating, except right at the end, but that was a different story. And so that actually worked out really well. So even though I expect to be able to work 330 time blocks in a healthy, fun way every quarter. There's quite a capacity for more than that that exists. At the end of the HB90 planning system pages, there are a few quarterly review questions. And one of them is, has your vision for your ideal life changed over the quarter? If so, how has it changed? What areas are clearer for you now than they were before? And I had one of those moments. This is one of the first times that I think I've actually had something change about my ideal vision of life going forward. Because I've used this system for 5 quarters or so at this point. But I had kind of thought in my head, as a reasonable seeming expectation of myself, that even though I have never finished a book all the way through to being like, I'm ready to publish this now, this feels ready, I had in my mind that I should write entirely all the way through, ready to be published, all 5 of the books in this first series that I want to publish, so that I could take advantage of the rapid release benefits of being a self-published author and release every 3 months. And it was only during this quarter where I was like, we can work up to that. Like, that is reasonable at another point in the career, but to start off like that is a little bit too bananas. So that was like a mindset shift that I had. Um, so instead, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be trying to get things in a place where it feels like every ideally 9 months I can release each next book of this first series. And hopefully through the process of that, it will get, progressively faster and easier. But we're going to start off not quite so hot. There's another question about what could you improve for next quarter and why? What is your plan for making that happen? I would like to have more fun during the drafting stage. So what I had done with Project Goblin was, for draft 1, I wanted to see what the baseline was going to be for how fast I could draft the first draft of an outline that I had fully plotted out and had, certain expectations of, like, I'm just trying to get the story on the page. I'm not trying to make it beautiful or the best version of itself. I really just want to see what this reads like in a prose form from start to finish. So that was the expectation I had. And I was able to do that in almost 4 weeks. And that was a very exciting realization of, like, first of all, what I could do, being someone who really needs things plotted out. When I have them plotted out, I can work that fast. What I learned from that was that I can write 3 chapters in that format pretty reliably every day. And it's okay. It's a lot to do 3 chapters every day, but it was okay. It wasn't pushing it too hard. Doing 4 chapters a day is a bad idea. Doing 1 to 2 chapters a day is kind of like a sweet spot. It's kind of like enough to be fun and also not run out of steam on it. So I wanted to play with the idea in this quarter of having my main goal, which is going to be Project Goblin, working on draft 2 of that, and having a drafting goal, and also having a flex for fun goal. I have never done that before. Usually my goals are do these things in this project, these things in that project, and these things in the third project. And I think I want to give myself a little bit more freedom to sort of lean into what seems fun at the time, because so far I've worked on 3 of the 5 books in this series, and I've approached each of them in a slightly different way. And I'm really appreciating and valuing the fact that I am approaching them in these different ways, because it's teaching me a lot about what feels like the right way going forward. So I feel like I'm kind of learning still what may be the way I want to do most books going forward. But for instance, with Project Goblin, I went through like 3 really intensive outlines, chapter by chapter outlines, and like thinking about story components and things. And I did a 50,000 word zero draft. And I did then a 96,000 word first draft. And now I'm about to start doing some second draft stuff. In comparison with the second book in the series, I have so far done 2 pretty detailed outlines. And the things that I've done in those outlines have been slightly different from what I did in Project Goblin. In the third book in the series, I spent the least amount of time on it. I didn't do a couple of the steps that I had done previously for outlining, and I did a couple different steps that were new in the outlining. And now I want to be first drafting a certain amount of chapters from that third book because it feels really ready and exciting. So it's kind of interesting to see all the different stages and things that have gone into the books. And I want to lean into that and not force myself to do the same process again and again. So that's kind of the idea behind it. But I do want to limit it in a way, structured freedom, sort of. So out of my 330 task blocks that I have allotted to myself, I want to spend up to 225 of them working on that second draft of Project Goblin. Up to 45 of them drafting the first 16 chapters of the third book in the series. And up to 60 of them just on things that are fun. Things that are fun about the world that I'm writing in and the other books in the series. So that includes, ideally, what I would think is fun at the time would be like doing an assessment of the second book in the series, doing an assessment of the outline that I had for that, and making some plans for what I want to change going forward, and brainstorming the fourth book in the series and possibly the fifth book in the series, and just some general character work and world building and things related to all of these things related to what my focus is, which is writing this 5-book series, but just like a lot more leeway to flex off and have fun during the process. I think that will go really, really far, and I'm excited to not sort of lock myself into a really rigid structure. I'm really looking forward to a lot of gardening in Q2 and just sort of a little bit of a refresh mental state from how crazy Q1 was on a personal level. So I hope that your writing is going really well. I hope that your spring is going really well, and I wish you the best, and I will see you in the next video.